Hi and welcome. And I did exactly the same thing last week. Oh, there's electricity back now. Right. Okay. Last week I also started with an outro instead of an intro. So apparently I'm a very slow learner. welcome, welcome, Alain Dumonceaux. I am so excited to talk to you because after I read that chapter that you did for our new book, Relationships for Men by Men, I I just knew that we have to have these conversations because there is just so much that you touched on that I see in people's lives every single day. So thank you so much for being brave and willing to do this and showing up.
Well, thank you so much for reaching out and considering me for in the book. It was definitely stepping out of my comfort zone as not an author, but it was opportunity to share a bit about my story, and hopefully it inspires others to look at themselves and how they can have improve the relationships in their lives. Well, it looks like we might have lost Louise there for a second. So yes, my name is Alain Dumonceaux, and I'm the founder of the Awakened Man, and I run a men's work here in Canada. And the focus on the work here is to really help guys. Under part of it, anyways, to help them really understand the relationships that we have, and our most important relationship is in a marriage. And so, one of the things that's been really critical is that, as a gentleman who's been twice married, that there was things in my life that I wish I had known more when I was younger. And it's not that I necessarily didn't know more about it, it's just intellectually it was there for me. But to be able to embody it and take the practice and be able to live wholly and completely as who I was something that took a while to really get to. And one of the things I talk about in my chapter of the book with Louise is how easy it was, especially in my 20s, to be lulled into this idea and belief that I was superior. Because in my first marriage, I ended up by marrying my high school sweetheart, and I truly thought it was going to be a marriage for life. That this was going to be the one and only relationship that I would have in my life. And the fact of the matter is that what was the challenge in that is that my wife loved me so much that she totally lost herself. And I allowed that to happen because it was so intoxicating to have somebody just worship who you are and lived for you and through you. And so it allowed me really to expand my career and go out and do things that self-served, but didn't put anything back into the relationship. And so what that ultimately caused for her was that she didn't get an opportunity to really be able to express who she was. And so it truly, in some aspects, you would think that it was very much a narcissistic point of view from where I was sitting, and a codependency in there as well in that relationship. And so I think the thing that's really key is when we're getting in these relationships is what's the marriage? A question I had to ask myself: is my marriage about being the best that I can be, and does that mean that discounts who my partner is? And instead, is there an opportunity to create enough space in our relationship where it's more of a we discussion versus a I discussion? And that goes for both sides of the equation, right? And I think that's where I really struggled, because it ultimately, while my professional career took off and I was extremely successful, my personal life was really just a shell. Because lots of people would think that, oh, there's Alan and his wife, and what a perfect couple, and we could play that role in that game to no end. But the challenge is that we never had any truly deep conversations with each other, really diving into our stuff. And because we were high school sweethearts, we also had lots of baggage and lots of water under the proverbial bridge that was carried forward. And so as a young man, I didn't have the skills to be able to address and to see just how much harm was happening in the relationship. And so when children come along, and we had We have two boys, and when the boys came along, the pressure of having to deal with a new family, new home, career starting to change, we didn't know how to deal with it. And so ultimately, what ended up by happening is it ultimately ended up by costing me that marriage. And so much so that, really the ultimate piece of it was not only did I lose my family, but I lost everything. It was bankruptcy and just everything totally wiped out. And I think the key with that is that because I wasn't conscious of what was happening, it really started me on that path. And so welcome back, Louise. Glad to see that you were able to join
Carry
us.
on.
I'm
Great
just
save.
having the audience and I are just talking about what it was like, in my first marriage and how unconscious I was, and just was able to just take advantage, really. And as I look at it today, take advantage of my first wife and how she just worshipped everything I did, and not really understand the damage I was doing to the relationship, but also to her. And it's just so important that, that's why I'm doing men's work today, is that if I could go back and talk to that 20 something, well, luckily I have children that are in that age today, to have the conversation about what's truly important in the relationship. And it isn't about what I can get out of it and what's important for me. While that has some aspect, it's truly about the we partnership. How do we grow as a couple? How do we deepen our relationship? And so that's about where I got to. And, it's your show. I'll turn it over back to you.
Well, I think you're doing so well that you can just carry on. And it was exactly what we were going to talk about, is just that thing that people teach us how to treat them. We teach people how to treat them. And so your first wife didn't have boundaries. So she taught you it was okay. Because very often people are going into some sort of victimhood. This one did this to me. That one is a villain. And all of us forget that we are actually grown-ups.
Yeah.
So yes, you were not innocent, but neither was your first wife. Because when both parties are not strong, then the relationship is out of balance. And it's so important to recognize that, yes, you could have done something differently, but there was another adult in the relationship that didn't do something differently. Before we carry on, I just really have to commend you. Thank you so much. Luckily, we had the 2 minutes to discuss this possible drama because of lack of electricity. So you are a superstar. Thank you so much. I want to just check our comments here. There. Mitch. Yes, this is what you call the best kind of host, replacement host, when you're in a pickle like this. Yes. Okay. So I quickly want to just go back to that slide that I shared. Well, look, okay, I have to regain my composure here. So
You're doing great, Louise.
okay, so that thing to live for me, and that I think that is what we want to talk about a little bit. So if you live for somebody else, you don't live for yourself. And so many of us do that. We live for somebody else and we forget we're supposed to live for ourselves. And that's the basis of a codependent relationship, isn't that?
Absolutely. And it's funny because we're having this conversation today, and I had it first thing this morning in a different conversation about how, and it was about me now, about how easily it is that the validation we look for, I think a larger part of it is that we're trained or taught that the validation comes from external, especially as children.
Yeah.
We're looking to do right so that we can get our needs met. So, and I think we model that relationship throughout our lives, but it takes, I think it takes something very dramatic. It doesn't necessarily need to be the end of a marriage, but something dramatic before us to take the opportunity to go, wait a second, this isn't working. And while I agree that there's two adults in this relationship, and while she didn't have any boundaries, I also had insecurities. Right. And that it's an insecurity because it was easy to accept all of the accolades and everything that she was giving me, because I was too insecure to be solid enough to say, hey, what about you?
Yeah.
And spend time and energy helping her, as opposed to just taking it. And I think as men, we have that as a fatal flaw for us, is that we look for validation, and a lot
It's
of
not a
times we are
man
looking
thing.
at it.
It's
Go
not a
ahead.
man thing. It's not a man thing. It's a human thing.
Human thing.
Yeah. We all look for validation, and I love what you say. We look for validation outside of ourselves. We don't
Yeah,
understand that we are supposed to get that validation inside ourselves.
totally agree. And I think that, and it takes time for us to understand that. I wonder for myself, is you know, in being fully human, and really taking my masculine, my sacred masculine, it's okay for me to be able to question my values, my beliefs, especially when they are infringing on boundaries, or preventing someone from their growth. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a big shift that started to happen in my 30s, but really didn't take hold for another 20 years for me, because it
But
was more
we
of an intellectual journey.
but there's so much in what you just said. You know, that preventing somebody else from going on their journey.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't understand that. So we are this person who don't say anything to the other person. So from your side, you liked the affirmation. You liked it gave you more confidence in the world. It made you feel good, whatever it
Yeah.
is that we get from it. But we like it, and it's true. We do really like it. But there's more to this. So when we go into the kind of people pleasing, projecting, I don't want to say anything to this person, I don't want to hurt them kind of thing. And then we don't put up the boundaries, and we are preventing other people from growing to more. Just like if your first wife has said to you, hold the lorry here,
Yeah.
you would have had that opportunity to go like, okay, somebody doesn't like what I'm doing. I need to grow a little bit and find my own validation. And so we feel guilty about putting boundaries, and we feel guilty about taking better care of ourselves. But it's so true what you said. We are holding other people back from growing.
Absolutely. And we do that because it is a sense of insecurity. And even though it may not look or appear that way, right? So it's still a sense of insecurity, because we're not, we need that validation. And if we stand up, or have someone stand up to us and say, wait a second, I don't appreciate that tone of voice, or I don't appreciate that on how you're treating me at this moment. And they start to set boundaries that we need to, it's a reflection about what our behavior is. And are we willing to look at that mirror? And that mirror won't necessarily be really clear. It'll have lots of dust on it, and so it's going to take time for us to clean it, so that we can be comfortable enough to be able to assess and face that piece of us that, well, why is it that I need the validation? What's going on for me internally? What is the piece that I'm missing? What part of love is not resonating with me?
Mm-hmm. So interesting this thing, because while we're inside the relationship, even if it's only sort of working, we have no incentive to wake up. We I wish it was different. I just wish it was different, that people would just say, okay, let's go for a few classes. But we don't know we're supposed to go for classes, because these codependent relationships fix so much inside us, except it doesn't. We feel so healed by somebody else's adoration or having somebody in our life, but we don't actually know to go and look um, for our own health.
I completely agree. And it's because I truly believe it's because we don't know how to do that. Because I think, in my scenario, I just modeled my parents. And I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people just model, that's your most significant relationship. It could be your parents, it could be someone else, but you model that, an aspect of it. And because while there was love in my home, there was still a disconnect of what that love looked like, right? There was
Mm-hmm.
that there wasn't a two-way conversation happening. It was one way only. And in that relationship, it was my mom who was the vocal one and the boisterous one, whereas my dad was more of the strong silent type. Now, as I said in my chapter, it was also, I truly believe that those conversations happened when we were out of the room. And it took many years later for Dad to open up and say something to me out of earshot of my current wife and my mom about starting to set a boundary. And I think that's because we just don't know how, right?
But so interesting that I mean, you're assuming that your father had that conversations with your mother, and he may never have had them. And so I think let's go to Mitch's question here, because it's exactly related to what you're talking about right now. So exactly this: how do I communicate without feeling? And I'm going to let you answer that one.
Hey, that's a great question, Mitch, and thank you for sharing that today. I think for me, how I would communicate without feeling like I'm attacking is to ask the question from a place of compassion. I really wanting to understand, what's going on for you in this moment, and that would be how I would phrase it, because it's if you start saying, "Well, I don't understand why you're so upset," so your tone or body language, are you coming from a place of trying to fix it, or are you going to come from a place of compassion? So coming in and asking for some guidance to it. I'm struggling here, Louise, to support you if we were in this conversation. Is it something that you want me to fix, or is it something that you just want me to listen? And that starts that conversation about what's going on. And then
the inquiry.
That's right. And then the next thing is we have to be strong enough to be silent, because it's so easy I know for me for sure, I'm just going to get in here and I'll just start tell. But the challenge with tell is that we never get an opportunity to listen and hear what's being said. So we're not creating a container and a safety net, because really the conversation requires safety that she needs to know. And it won't be easy at first, because there'll be past habits, there's programming that she has and that you have, but it's to build that strength. And I would also recommend that maybe start having that conversation with something that's small, that it's not a do-all or be-all for the relationship. Something else that you can start to bridge that conversation. And until you get comfortable with it and confident, do it after, when the emotions have settled down. That could be in 10 minutes, that could be in a day. The point I'm trying to make is that if you're concerned that the energy on the emotion behind it, because you use the word attack, has lots of energy to it, doesn't it? And so we have a time to gather ourselves, and what is the desired outcome that you're trying to achieve? Do you really want to understand what your wife is feeling, what's going on with her, or are you just trying to get your own needs met? Well, I don't understand, so you just have to give me an answer. It's probably not going to be you're not going to get the result that you're looking for.
Yeah, that tone and how it's done. I love what you're saying. So we, when we take away the defense by being inquiry, and we are not blaming anybody,
Yes.
then we are not actually attacking the other person. We are just there for the conversation. We're so defensive. We just block so much because we're so fear driven. When we start being fear driven, and like you say, become compassion driven, become interested, then we open the doors to communicating. So let me see. Mitch says thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a training I took, and it's called Crucial Conversations. And one of the things that they teach in that, and I think it works great in relationships, is it's about having I call them hard conversations or crucial conversations. And another way to help diffuse the energy in there is to approach it from, Louise, the story I'm telling myself, and that's how you start it, is that when I see you act so in such and such a way, get upset, or you get a scowl, is that it tells me that you're shutting down and that you're really not interested in what I have to say. Is that really what's going on? And so you're using some inquisitiveness. You're trying to get, you're trying to open the conversation to not sound too accusatory with it, because you're really trying to get a clarity on what we think is going on. We're not mind readers. I can't read what's going on in your mind. We may be married for 25 years. That still doesn't mean I know exactly what's going on.
Still no mind reading. No mind reading.
No mind reading. So we get clarity on the at the table to be able to come.
It takes us away. Sorry, Alan. It takes us away from the assumptions that we make into the next. But no, it's a great tip. This one, the story, because our stories is the assumptions that we make.
Yes, and based on our personal experiences, which may be true for us to some level, and will have probably little, if any, truth to the individual.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I want to go to our next slide. So give me a second. Let me go. Here we go. Getting married the second time, I wanted to make sure I didn't repeat my past mistakes. So this time I was more engaged in the relationship, but not fully giving of myself either. I had made a promise to myself to never allow someone that close to my heart again. I would protect myself when things would be better. Or at least that's what I thought. And I'm sure you know why I shared this, because there are just so many people who do this.
It's true. We get wounded, and when that wound happens, we make a pact. Sometimes that pact is a silent pact, and other times it'll be more. This, for me, pact was very much vocal, and I can remember saying that after the marriage failed, because it was such. I truly believed, I was saying, just as we were getting on, I believed this was the one and only relationship that I was going to have, the lasting one, that, right to the end. And when that failed, I felt like my entire heart was ripped out. And in my healing journey, I believed that if I kept a piece of that for me, one piece of my heart, and didn't give fully, then I'm protecting myself. And while that it did serve for a little while, it also prevents me from really being truly authentic and whole and complete with my current marriage, because I'm holding back, because I'm afraid of a potential outcome. And so really what I'm doing is I'm really perpetuating that outcome, because I'm not willing to take that step. And those are the kinds of conversations that I have today now with my wife. And they're still very challenging. There's still times where I hold back, and when I can catch myself, and Kim is very good at catching it now, that she'll call me on it, which is perfect, because there is nothing to hide. Everything, in order for the relationship to truly dive into true compassion, we have to be willing to be totally vulnerable. And it's we call that that level 5 of intimacy, where I completely put my heart on the table, and she has full to do whatever it is that she wishes to do with it. But there's enough trust and safety in that I know that she will handle it with care and love and compassion, and that we'll be okay.
Sorry about the beep. There's no imminent danger of you taking over as host again. It's just all the emergency equipment here in the background. We'll stop in a minute. Sorry, apologize to everyone. So the problem with holding back on any kind of level is that the other person somehow senses that it creates a bit of a, I don't think the word is mistrust. I think it's there's a bit of a fear factor in a relationship if one person holds back. Don't you think?
I completely agree. And there are some pieces of mistrust or distrust. And I think there's a nuance in those two, right? Because it gives especially when the other individual, let's face it, all of us have lived our lives, and it hasn't been perfect. When we've had experiences that have caused us to have some distrust, or mistrust. And so when we're not feeling like someone's being totally authentic or truthful and expressing themselves, then we start to question, well, what's going on with that? And when we start to question, it generally doesn't go to a very good place. We'll go to the worst outcome or the lowest common denominator of what's happening. And so if you have the courage, you can create the courage and the safety in the relationship where you can call that out and say, Alan, I think you're holding back. Like that, I've seen you be more open about a topic like this, and you're not sharing like you are. What's going on for you? How can I support you in what needs to be said?
Do you think that sometimes somebody who's guarding themselves actually pulls back even further when that inquiry starts happening, when that fear and unease in the other person starts to show?
That they pull back even further?
No, that like you would be pulling back further if somebody, I think the term would be like come at you, want to have more and you holding back.
Yeah, I think it's for the first, I think in the beginning, you will have that experience, right? As someone who holds back, well, what are they coming after for? Because your past experience may say, when this happens to me in the past, then I'm punished in some way, shape, or form. And when we can recognize that that's that inner child that's speaking, or our ego, it's truly our inner child, that we have to let that child know that everything's going to be okay. That it's okay to hear what needs to be said. Now, this is an assumption that it's not an abusive relationship and all that. That's a completely different conversation. But in general, in the types of conversation we're having today, it's about pushing through that and facing that shadow piece of us of why it's happening, and to be as comfortable and okay as you can to allow the questioning. And if it truly is rapid fire, bang, 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 question after question, then you can step into your truth and express, Louise, I just can't answer these right now because it's rapid fire questions. Can you just give me one true question you want me to answer? And
also somebody who's not that healthy is not going to just ask questions. It's going to sound like accusations. Yeah. It's going to sound like judgment. And I mean, this relationship thing is a tricky thing when we don't know how to adult.
Yeah, it totally is. I can tell you in transitioning between my first marriage and the second one, I was doing things as simple as timeouts, like what I would do for my children, because I found the power in that gave me the opportunity to gather my thoughts, to take a moment. And I can tell you it was very difficult in the beginning to take the time out and say, listen, I just need a break, and to step away from it, and for my wife to accept that her world wasn't falling apart because I needed a break. And sometimes that break would be leaving the home. Other times it would just be going to another room and contemplating about, again, what do I truly want from this outcome?
Yeah, I don't want to go away from this topic. I just want to say to everybody who's listening, this beep story will go away in a minute. It's my backup UPS, which if you don't live in South Africa, you have no clue what a UPS is. And I can genuinely not do anything about it unless I get up and leave here and move it somewhere else, because to keep everything charged, we have to have backup UPS here. So I'm really sorry about it. It will be over in a minute or so. And I know the conversation is worth hanging on for. I really don't know how to stop it from making a noise. It's not possible. Okay, let's go back to building in that time, building in that moment of reflection. So important, because when you're in child mode, when you're in defensive mode, in blaming, judging, deflecting, punishing, those things happen in an instant. And if you can just start with building in that time so that you don't just go back to the instant, then you are a very big step nearer to learning how to be present fully.
Absolutely. And if we can recognize that all of these behaviors that are happening, whether it's for us or our partner, that they are coping mechanisms that we've developed over the years. It's how we've been able to make it through challenging times, moments. And when we can sit and recognize that this isn't typical behavior and it happens in certain instances, and that's where journaling has really helped me as well, to take a time to, maybe not in that moment, obviously, but to go back and be able to think about the thoughts. And I'm very much an introspective type of guy now. So it's just different strategies. There's lots of different ways to attack it. But for me, the when I can take that, remember, we used to do this with our kids too, is that, count to 10. There's a lot of power in simple. It doesn't need to be really complex. But if we're choosing to consistently just engage, then what we're not allowing is enough space to be created to find a different avenue, because the depth of our relationship doesn't change because we're in the same mode constantly. We're having the same dance, and we need to learn a new step.
The instant response doesn't leave space for truly listening.
True. Yep.
It's we're always ready to have the next thing ready, and because we're so ready with the next word, the next defense, the next blame, there's no space for the listen.
Yeah, it's totally true. And I think a way to help alleviate that is to be able to play back what you just heard, because it forces you. It's the active listening piece of it. It forces you to really listen, because you're absolutely right. How many times in conversations are we already thinking about the answer? We're 3 words into the conversation and we already think we know the answer to the question or the statement that's being made, as opposed to taking a moment and listening to what's being said, and then not necessarily parroting back, but rephrasing back to what you thought you heard helps drive a conversation.
Now Mitch has a really good question for us again.
Right on.
I'm just scared to even start with this one because it's such a good question. We can be here the whole night. Are we following an outdated concept by believing till death do us part? Do you see what I'm saying? This is like a really big question. So what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think it's all about the meaning we put around that. Could it be till death do us part? I believe that that works for many couples, many couples. I think it's about, what are you looking for in that relationship, and how are you coming into that relationship present? It's not I don't think it's a right or wrong answer. I think what's right for you and the relationship that you're in. It could be till death do us part. And sure, that you got to remember that part of marriage is really an old idea about that came out of a religious belief about being able to have the man be able to have offspring and be able to continue with the lineage, because if they didn't have that, then everything that he owned would go to the church. So a lot of this stuff is embedded and we don't understand that. And so today that's not how it works. So it's about, what is the compatibility for yourself and that and your spouse. And if it means through your journeys that it is a till death do us part, that's awesome. If it doesn't mean that, that's awesome as well. I would just caution to think of it that it's your out, because that's the other side of that coin, is that if we don't think of it that way, and I always have an out, then then you're not going to do your work and you're not going to be engaged in it.
Yeah. I have a friend who has been married quite a few times, and after she started doing this work of adulting better in a relationship, knowing how to get her wants and needs met, knowing how to put boundaries, how to be present, how to listen. She said to me, Louise, you know what? If I have known these things that I know now, I could have made at least 2 out of those failed marriages work. So I think I like to believe in the idea of happy ever after is possible when we have got 2 adults showing up, adults who are totally taking responsibility for themselves and for their part. I'm always saying that in a relationship, we are 100% responsible for our 50%. And if we don't take 100% responsibility for our 50%, then we are not present in our relationship. And if we are not willing to be negotiating and renegotiating all the time. As we get to a new level, as our partner gets to a new level, we are not going to let this go till death do us part.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it is totally possible, and I just think we should never, ever, ever say we have to do this or I have to fix this at all costs because of death do us part. Because, that's what I used to do. I used to say,
Mm-hmm.
I will fix this, and I would jump in and I would fix it. I had this idea that it can't go wrong.
Yeah.
And and it doesn't work. You have to have two people working in a relationship. Otherwise, you don't have a relationship.
Absolutely, completely agree with that, because it is so true. Both, you have to have two willing partners. Willing, in order, what I mean by that is willing to do their work so that they can be, as you say, 100% committed to their 50%. And I think when that isn't happening, does that mean it's time to blow up the relationship? Maybe, maybe not. It's about the willingness to do the work in growth, because both people, we're not going to grow like this. Most likely it's going to be like this, and then it's going to be like this, and it's going to be like this, it's going to be like this. The key is, what is the core piece that keeps the relationship moving forward? And as long as that is built on solid ground, and what I mean by that, you share enough of the same values or similar values. Do you express those values in a similar way? Both could value, for example, you both could value money. But maybe one values money so they can spend it, and the other one values it so they can save it. It's both have the value of money. Is there a place though in between that you can be solid on, build a solid foundation where there can be some of both that allows you to grow as a couple? And I use that because I think it's the easiest way to put the analogy. But there's lots of different aspects of a relationship that you can build a solid foundation from, and as long as that's rock steady, then the rest of the stuff is just a matter of, is the brick in the right place? And it may take time to move that, or now we just have to redo the house. We're gonna have to take this wall out, in our relationship, and it needs to move because I've changed. Because I guarantee you're not the same individual you were when you got on your wedding day than we are today, and neither is she. That she's changed and she's evolved. And so it's about recognizing that and knowing that while we're in this relationship together, it's not about the old, you complete me. Nobody completes the other person. We have companionship, and we're humans, and we're built for companionship. We like that. We need that in our lives. It's a complement to what we have in our lives. It's to help us grow more as individuals.
Yeah, our job is to complete ourselves so that we
right.
can be an already completed person in the relationship. I do want to point out that it's just going back to my previous comment. I think it's really important that we note that we are not supposed to do 100% of everything in the relationship. We're only supposed to do 100% of our 50%. If we are doing the other person's 50%, it's not going to work.
No.
There's no such thing in a relationship as a guilty party and an innocent party. There's always, usually if something goes wrong, it's like you said in your first relationship. One person was doing too much and the other one was doing too little.
Mm-hmm.
One was reaching too far and the other one was reaching too little. And so in your example, it would have been your first wife was willing to do more than her 50% to keep it going.
Yes.
I mean, I used to do that myself. You cannot fix a relationship that way. You can only fix it if you're with somebody else who's willing to do their 50%.
Agreed. Completely agree.
Okay, let me see what Mitch is saying here. Okay, there's some hands clap. Oh, we are not finished, Mitch. We are not finished. I've got one more thing. I love having these conversations. So let me go back to my last slide here. So there was just so much that was good in this chapter. I cannot wait for people to read this book. It is so good. I've got the last little bit back from the editor, and so I just want to get it out as fast as possible. Let me see. There. Oh, this is a long one. This one. This is a part. I think you've told the story about you didn't see your family, and how we're modeling our relationships. But this part, slowly but surely, I gave a piece of myself away each time that we would argue. And so I think this is with Kim, right? Not
Yeah.
willing to fight for my point of view in fear of being that egotistical guy I used to be. So you went to the other side completely.
Hmm.
So being humble was now the virtue du jour. Stuffing your emotions in who you really are, only to find solace in another individual lacks integrity and reeks weakness. It took almost losing my second marriage for me to realize that reading a book, getting certified, or attending a seminar isn't worth the time or effort if I choose not to use the knowledge I've gained. So I think let's talk about going the other direction, going completely, totally the other direction. And you being now, what shall we call it? Being the more needy one, the more,
Hmm.
what would you call it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was definitely the more needy, because I went from someone who worshipped everything I did to somebody who was extremely independent. And
Mm,
while, and I would suggest, didn't need me the way that my first marriage did. And so that was really challenging. And what I love about, and my wife's name is Kim, what I love about her is that she has the courage to stand up and speak her word, and to be fully present. And that was very difficult for me. And so when we would have arguments about something, and it could be about anything, that I would start to fight against it or push back against it, and she would just keep coming at it. That I would go and get into panic and fear mode. I don't want to be alone. I don't want to lose everything a second time. And so the question I would ask myself is, well, in a year from now, will this matter anymore? And that's a great way to take the steam out of what's happening at the moment. But it's also a really poor way to deal with emotions, because if that's your default, guess what? You'll never have an argument. We will never have the hard conversations, the crucial ones that need to be had. And so when I came to the point of almost losing my second marriage, that's when it really hit me hard that, they say the longest journey is from here to here. And I have lots of it here. And sometimes there's a traffic jam in getting to my heart, to getting to that place, to truly be comfortable and to be in that place. And while I do a pretty decent job of getting there, and I still have lots of work to do, there's still a little bit further to go. And so the way I say it today is, I know that I know to my belly that I know. When you can internalize it in your gut, that how you just know something,
mm,
that you've totally fully embodied that meaning or that purpose or that value that you have, that
mm,
then it's free flowing. And so the work today for me is to still be able to be in that place, to allow Kim to be who she is, stand up for what I believe in, whether it's arguing over whether we need another piece of cooking appliance. I like cooking appliances. I used to be a chef, so I like a cooking appliance, whether we need it or not. And instead of stepping back on it, just, it's okay to have I don't call them arguments anymore. They're discussions. We're having a discussion,
mm, mm,
and then transitioning that into a dialogue where, okay, well, what's really going on with it? Why do I need the latest, Instapot
mm,
or
mm,
whatever's in the market? And what need am I trying to fill with that? Because it's really what's happening. It's a need that I'm trying to fill. And ultimately it comes down to that the need I'm just looking for is to feel more fulfilled, to feel more valued. And the truth of the
mm,
matter is that I'm totally loved and valued in my relationship. And these other things don't bring anything. They actually don't add anything to the environment for us.
Wow, there's just so much. Where do we start? Okay, so let's start with keeping peace at everything squad, because there's a whole lot of people that will just keep peace at anything. And I and women and men, but actually just it wasn't worth talking about. And I was married to a conflict avoidant. Been married 48 years, but the first 15 years of our marriage, we had zero conflict. There was no conflict because he just wouldn't have a conflict about anything else. And so people used to say to us, and we were hugely codependent, and people used to say to us, "You've got the perfect relationship." We didn't even know what it was to fight. There was no fight. But I found it very frustrating because on a certain level, I knew it wasn't healthy. On a certain level, I wanted that pushback.
Yeah.
And there was no ways to get it out. And because he never did that, he started being passive aggressive. And once passive aggressiveness and the resentment started coming in, it was very nearly the end of our relationship. It was really terrible. And so just to encourage people to understand that not talking is going to come out in another way. And
Absolutely.
it actually causes the conflicts in the end.
Absolutely, because what it does is it takes the thing, whatever that thing is, that was really small, and makes it more than what it truly is. Because we build on it, we pile onto it, because we've taken that thing now and we've added other parts that the other hurt in our life. We throw that on, and then we think, and then there's pieces not just in that relationship, but the other meanings from other relationships start to pile on, and ultimately we make it out to be something that it's not. And instead, to be able to have it, I think the healthiest thing for couples to be able to do, and Kim and I continue to work on this, is to be able to have that proverbial fight where we can stand with each other solid in what our belief is, and push back on it, and to push back so that, and trust me, we're not perfect at this either. The tonality isn't always great, but we're comfortable enough to know that the other person is coming from a place of love, and they're working just as hard as I am. Both of us are working just as hard as the other to get to this place of mutual understanding, just to understand. We don't have to agree on whatever the point of view that we're talking about. We don't agree on all of the things dealing with spirituality. To a point we do, but my wife has a little bit different take on spirituality than I do. That's okay. But I honor and respect where she's at, and she does that for me. So when we have the discussion that deals with spirituality, for example, we both know where the other person is coming from. So it's safe. It's not like it's going to be a destructive conversation and it's going to end anything. And I think we have a lot of that doomsday idea that if we fight, well, then it means that I'm a bad husband, or I'm a bad spouse, or that it's going to end up being physical, because that's what you've seen in your life. It doesn't need to mean any of that. We are in control of what the meanings are. We can rewrite the script. We can rewrite the chapter. We can take the lesson and make a different lesson.
I think what you're also saying in another way is that you're accepting that the other person is different from you. It's okay if they've got different opinions, and you respect that, and they respect you. Because when you've got that, you don't have to think the same. You are willing to disagree. That just puts a whole different way of looking at the relationship. You're not more okay because they agree with you. You already agree. Okay.
Exactly. And what it does is that, it allows for growth to happen, because life would be really boring if we agreed on everything. Like, I couldn't imagine living and being in a relationship where we agreed on 100% on everything, because there's no growth in that. And I'm a believer that pain is inevitable in life, but suffering's optional. And so we have growth when we feel pain. That's how, when we get a cut, that's pain, and it heals and it gets stronger, and that spot gets much stronger. It's likewise for us in who we are as humans, is that we're going to encounter pain, and that pain can be disagreement on a topic, on anything, and that knowing that it's not the be all or end all of the relationship, that we have the strength and confidence in it, that we can express who we are, And it takes time to get there. And it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be messy at first. But the agreement, getting the agreement that this is the practice that we're going to engage in to help each other grow as individuals is really the key piece of everything I think we're talking about today.
Yeah, the acceptance of the other person, that rests a lot on our acceptance of ourselves, our belief in ourselves, give us the capability to have somebody who doesn't agree with us. So the more we believe in ourselves, the more space we have for other people's opinions. So it's always a question of self-growth. Our self-growth is what's going to make the relationship great in the end. And so we just don't know it when we start out.
It's totally, absolutely true, because our growth, and as you know, as involved in a relationship, sometimes if we think of a relationship as a dance, sometimes I'm going to lead, sometimes she's going to lead. And when we're in that role, either as the receiver or the leader, what we're really witnessing is a reflection of who we are as a person. And so if our communication we haven't learned to have great communication and haven't learned how to really get into dialogue, we're going to have that reflected back to us. And so it's not necessarily hard work, it's challenging. It's challenging.
It's fantastic. Yeah, it's actually fantastic. Once you figure out how it works, it just, all that draining energy goes away, and it actually just becomes a whole new thing. And it's not a big thing that we have to figure out, but it's a huge thing. But it's not hard, but it is really important to focus and concentrate on getting it right, because it does really become the most enriching experience when we learn to be present in our relationships.
100%.
I want to give a minute here and see if we have any more questions for you. I'm sure that everybody is enjoying it as much as I am. I'm going to say to everybody who comes in and watch the replay, please continue your comments, share with everybody else. This really needs to be shared with the world. Let me just get Muffin out of here. She's coughing. There she goes. So we've had enough funny sounds here for the day. So if you come in later, we will go back and we will go and comment. We'll go and check your questions. And I want to say to everybody who watches, whether it's live or on the replay, we thank you so much for doing that. Remember to give us some hearts and shares and likes and comments, because then Facebook are showing it to everybody. Facebook is really not working with us right now, because it's not posting it to the profile anymore. So not as many people know that it's on. We always have to adapt to whatever Facebook want to do to us next. Yeah. But so everybody who watches, we really do appreciate you, and please do share. So I don't see any more comments here. Let me check if I've seen everyone. Yeah, no, so just that one from Mitch. So last one, Mitch asked really good questions. Anything else from you as a parting thought? What would you say to guys on this road? A guy whose heart has been broken.
Yeah.
What would you say?
You know what I would say that first off is you have to hang in there, brother, because while our hearts can be broken, they are mendable. And they get mended when we start to do that internal work and look at what was the ultimate cause of the broken heart. Own only what is ours to own, and not take anything more, because there were two people involved in that relationship, and they need to do the same thing on their end. And when we start to do that healing journey, then we can start to really understand more about who we are as men, and then we can start to show up as we truly desire. And I would say that's our work to do, is to do just that.
I love it. I'm not going to say anything after this. Thank you so much for this. Can't wait for our book to come out. We will tell everybody when it's out. So don't fear. We will definitely tell everybody. And thank you. I would love to have more conversations about this.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thank you so much, Louise, for having me on.
Thank you to everyone. Much love.
Bless you.